Thank you so much for being here. I'm Rachel Donaldson. I'm the curator of collections and exhibitions here at the BMI. And I want to welcome you to the first installment of the BMI's Work Matters program, which aims to create meaningful conversations about the past as well as the present and future of work in our city. We will focus on contemporary, timely work-related issues, as well as more reflective, history-based conversations that help to shed light on the experiences of work and industries in the past. Discussions will weave together historical context, including materials from the museum's collections and exhibitions, with insights behind the headlines today. And I'd like to welcome our presenters today. We have Jon Michaud here, who is a writer and librarian based in New Jersey. He's the author of 2 books, Tito Loves Clara, a novel from 2011 that was named the best book of the year by Barnes & Noble Review, and what we're going to be discussing today, Last Call at Coogan's, The Life and Death of a Neighborhood Bar that was released this year. And Melanie at Griffith's Tavern opened in April of 2022 in Hampden, but has been a neighboring watering hole for nearly 100 years. Originally a stag bar, it now stands as an inclusive space, reimagined by new owners Hannah Spangler and Allison Crowley. Thank you so much for being here. And then once I please pass this, or use that. So the reason why we have everyone here today is that this is a program associated with the opening of our latest exhibit, which is officially 1 week old, and that is the Neighborhood Corner Bar. If you haven't seen it yet, I highly recommend checking it out. And in this exhibit, we try to do many things. As many of you know, with the galleries that we have throughout the museum, we focus on work. We are a museum about work and workers. But instead of looking just at the lives of workers on the job, we wanted to explore what workers did off the job and the communities that they created. So the title of the new exhibit is The Neighborhood Corner Bar, A Baltimore Story, 1870 to 1920. And in this, we're really focusing on bars, not just as places where people drank, but as centers of community and community development. In fact, during this time period, bars were referred to as working man's clubs. And there was, in fact, a very gender dimension to this, which you can all learn about in the interpretation of the gallery. But I really want to emphasize the aspect about community spaces and the significance of bars as community spaces, because that's going to be a thread throughout the conversation today. And I want to begin by using Last Call of Coogan's as basically the framework for our discussion. And Jon, this is an excellent book. We have it for sale here. If you don't own a copy, I highly recommend purchasing one. It is as much a story of a neighborhood as much as it is a story about a bar. And that's because it seems like Coogan's was inextricably tied to the political, cultural, social, you name it, community fabric of Washington Heights from its opening in 1985 to its closing in 2020. So much of how you describe Coogan's dovetails well with Hannah and Allison's efforts to create an inclusive community space. And so I wanted to read this really quick description for all of you following along at home. It's on page 156. And this is where you describe kind of the ideal that Coogan's aspired to be. Where you write, to be exemplary, the ideal New York City saloon would have to do more. It would feel like an essential part of the urban infrastructure and take some of its cues from the most democratic institutions in the city, subways, parks, and libraries, which are open to all and encourage the commingling of people from different backgrounds. So I'd like to kind of keep this in the back of our minds as we talk about bars of the past and present. So I want to begin actually now to the question part. I want to begin by talking about the taxonomy of bars that you described here. That there are different types of bars that we're all aware of. You've got sports bars, dive bars, corner bars, my favorite, old man bars. And you tried to parse out where Coogan's fits, what kind of bar it was, ultimately describing it as a new category of sorts, where you explain, and I quote, it is an Irish bar that was hospitable to women and children, and also a refuge for the working people of the neighborhood. So my question is, why does this taxonomy matter? And does the category a bar fits in help to determine the kind of role it plays in the community that it serves?
Well, thank you all for coming, and thank you for having me. It's wonderful to be here with all of you. So the idea of the taxonomy of bars comes from Rosie Schaap, who wrote a book called Drinking with Men, in which it's like an autobiography in 10 bars that she drank in over the years. She was a serial monogamist when it came to bars. And so each of the bars in her book falls into a different slot in this taxonomy of bars. So I just borrowed that from Rosie. And well, I think it helps. You know, we have certain expectations when we hear it's a corner bar, it's a sports bar, it's a hotel bar. And so it helps you, you know, as a patron, it helps you decide, oh, yeah, that's where I want to go tonight, or no, I really don't want to go there tonight. But I think for the owners of Coogan's, you know, they started out, they were both raised in traditional Irish neighborhoods, and for them, it was the Irish bar that was the exemplary bar that they came up out of. But the two primary owners, they wanted to do something different. So they expanded it and they absorbed all these other influences. And so they opened their traditional Irish bar up to being something larger, to being more of a community center. So I think perhaps, and you guys can speak to this more directly than I can, maybe blurring the lines between the taxonomy is the way to go to make the most interesting bars.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to ask for you both. If you could comment, you know, on whether or not you would agree, and what kind of category do you think Melanie at Griffith Tavern fits
into? Yeah, I would say I agree. You kind of have to know like what you're getting yourself into for the night, or day, whichever is your fancy there. Yeah, I do. Yeah. And as far as Mel's, I think we're a dive bar. Was an old man's bar. Still has that to it, but a dive bar that's not a queer bar also. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm gonna let you know. You can just call it Mel's.
Oh, okay.
Most people do, or they call it the ice, which is a whole other we can get into that later. I agree with what Allison. I think, and I think you pointed it. The more category of bars, I mean, we're obviously not a hotel bar, but I think that like it's a lot of things, and I think that depending on what you need at the time, you're going to call it a different thing. You know, like if you're older man and you go in and there's another older guy, it's your old man bar. But if it happens to be like after Busch Gardens gets out, like it's your gay bar. Like it's all things to all people most of the time. I think. Yeah. Oh well, no, not all people. No. Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that's really the characteristic of a true neighborhood bar, right? That it can be flexible and welcome people from different walks within the neighborhood and treat them all equally, right? Isn't that what you say?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
So maybe that's the ultimate peg in the taxonomy, is the neighborhood bar, which incorporates so many other traits from other bars within.
Yeah, exactly. So I wanted to kind of push you a little bit more on the description of an inclusive space. Like, what goes into making an inclusive space, and what does that mean to you?
We were talking about this earlier, actually, and what we kind of came up with was it's boundaries. Yeah, everyone should be able to come into this space and enjoy themselves. And like behind the bar, we're kind of practicing like a lot of radical openness. We have such a diverse kind of clientele, like age, sexuality, like just all kinds of people come there and feel comfortable there and have conversations with each other. And it's really beautiful. But you know, someone comes in and is is talking about things that make other people feel unsafe. For example, we're gonna shut it down. That's going to be it. Like no more openness there. Like, okay, that's done now, and you can stop or you can go. And so like it really comes down to the boundaries that we set and maintain.
Yeah, I think our number one rule that we've sort of discussed and used to be written on the mirrors is, and excuse me if you're tender of ear, but like don't be a dick. That's like our number one thing. Like you can hang out as long as you can hang out, and if you can't hang out, then go somewhere else, because there's plenty of places where they want to hear about what you're talking about. This is not that one. So that's kind of that's the inclusivity part, is that like I don't care Call is short, where you from, but if you have to exist in a space and make somebody else feel bad being there, then you can't be there. That's sort of the line.
I love that that's your version of kind of like the McSorley's Be Good or Be Gone.
Yeah.
For the owners of Coogan's, they opened their bar in 1985 when their neighborhood was the highest crime neighborhood in New York City. It was the center of the crack trade in New York and much of the East Coast. And so safety was a primary concern for them. And their initial ethos was just make the place safe. And once people feel safe, they can have fun. And then you can introduce joy. And so, like you say, no freedom without laws, no fun without rules. And so they had their rules. You know, if you spoke unpleasantly to the people who work there, or if you were rude to other patrons, you were asked to leave. Or if you tried to sell drugs, you were also asked to leave. So same thing. You know, you got to establish boundaries and rules, and then that allows everybody to have a good time.
John, I'm going to say one of my favorite descriptions is, and I forget, is it Dave, that he would, if there's somebody being unruly, would try to get him in conversation, but pretend that he couldn't hear and keep backing away till he got to the door and just like push them out.
That's right. With Peter. Okay, I'm sorry, I can't hear you. And he would whip them around and out the door they would go.
So yeah, well, I like that too. And that's actually leads to my next question with idea of safety. So something that struck me as you described the owners of Coogan's is that they really believed in the concept of eyes on the street. And this was a term that was coined by Jane Jacobs in her 1961 book, The Death and Life of American Cities. And in it, the idea is that neighborhoods that have a mix of commercial and residential places, especially commercial places that are on street level, that they are safer because people are there at all times of day and night, and that especially the commercial the store owners have a vested interest. They are part of the community and they see what's going on. They see who lives there, and so you have this community buy-in. And that's something that you noted that Coogan's had, during this era of benign neglect by municipal leaders. They really focused on keeping the area safe and clean. Also making sure that they didn't board up their windows during times of civil unrest. That they're very much, again, part of the fabric that believed in this eyes on the street. So I was wondering if you could maybe take a minute and explain that a little bit more, why this was so important to them as not just business owners, but as bar owners.
Well, as business owners, small business owners in that community, the success of the community was directly related to the success of their business. And so they wanted to participate in the success of the business. And so they had a vested interest in standing out front, seeing what was going on. They had a network of other local business owners. They also knew a lot of police officers and other people in city administration in the area, so they could notify people if something was going on. Bars are communication centers, especially before cell phones. That's where local information, gossip, is passed. You would go into the bar to find out what's going on. So all of that played into Coogan's importance as a hub of local information and of their feeling it was their duty to be out there, just standing in their doorway, watching what's going on. One of the first times I interviewed Peter Walsh, this I guess he was a college-age kid, comes riding by on a bicycle, and Peter stopped and was chatting with Peter, and he said, I've got a girlfriend now, and I'm going to take her out. I'm going to take her out for dinner next week. It's her birthday, and I did what you said. I bought myself a blue blazer. I'm going to show respect to her, and I'm going to take her out. And then he said, thank you for offering that advice to me. And so Peter, after the kid cycled off, Peter turned to me and said, I've known that kid since he was 5 years old and playing stickball out here. And so, there's that role too. You're kind of a mentor, a good influence in the neighborhood. And Coogan's took that very seriously and changed many people's lives because of it.
Yeah. So I was wondering if you could both comment on what you think. If you think bars today, if you think your bar plays a role in, community stability and safety, what do you think about that?
Our bar is in if you haven't been there, it's sort of up the hill in the middle of a neighborhood off of a main drag of bars and restaurants. And it's sort of a stopping ground for a lot of people in the neighborhood just in general because of where it is sort of like the middle of the wheel of the neighborhood. And it used to be sort of dark and uninhabited. And I think that just Mel's having a pink neon open sign and like a sign outside and the doors are always open does lend itself to sort of a like, yeah, we know what's going on. We also feel like our bar also like offers some safety to people that come in because we have the nosiest neighbors. We have a couple that lives across the street and they are watching what's going on and they are making sure it's on the up and up and letting us know if we get too loud or any of that. I think we're pretty respectful. We're not a super late bar, but as far as community safety, just because we're a little bit shut off from the neighborhood, it's not so much that, but I think is like a general clientele safety aspect. We are sort of known for that as being a place where, like, say you were out on a date on the avenue and you didn't feel so great about it, you could come to Mel's and kind of, and have somebody watching your back and making sure that you were okay as far as that goes. We do, again, I think feel pretty strongly about like keeping our, we have a property attached to our bar at the house and keeping that, looking like it's inhabited. We get our grass cut, we take care of the front of it, we don't allow trash, we pick up the cigarette butts, just giving the neighborhood sort of like this is a place where you're going to be okay. And especially involving with the city, it's the way that it is in the city, but we have Narcan at the bar, we have people that know how to use it, we have like a lot of people around us that are trained medically, so it's also a place where like if you needed help you could go and like run through the door and be like, hey, I need somebody that can do X, Y, or Z. And so I think we sort of offer that as an option for people as well, which is a little different, but yeah,
yeah, I mean, that seems like it's updating. You're kind of, moving into the new times about what is required for community stability.
Yeah, the nice thing about the bar is that we hear a lot of stories about how historically it has been that sort of community space. People will come in that we haven't met before, like, oh, well, my grandfather used to live around the corner and he would drink here and I would run down and get like a licorice whip and grandma would send me down, or an egg. Yeah, grandma would send me down to like get him, but then behind the bar they would give me something. And I think we're new, as Hannah said, and I think we kind of like aspire to be that way. Like with our open, we know a lot of the neighborhood dogs, for example. Like, but I don't think we know they're people yet. No. But we know the dogs when they know to sit outside the door. No. And we've got the snacks for them, and yeah, it's something to aspire to. I think, like as we age into business.
Yeah, and it's interesting because thinking about Coogan's, as you described, being a safe space, like kind of like a harbor during a really tumultuous time in New York City history. I think you can even kind of expand beyond that with what you're saying with how Mel's is a queer space and a safe space in a really difficult political time right now. So do you think that also kind of expands that idea not only of like community, but of being a community safe space? Hope so.
I really hope so. It was definitely something that as we were planning this business and before we opened, like, well, this is going to be like this is a queer space because we are people, and so what else could it be? And it wasn't until we actually opened and saw like people coming in the door, and I mean, on our first night open, someone pulled me aside and was like, you know what, like post COVID, like in this climate, like whatever, like you don't know where you can be and where you can feel safe or where you can like wear a mask and no one's going to give you grief, or like this list of things, like this is that spot. So cool. I don't know. Like, yeah. Like, oh, I didn't even think of that. Like, that's great. I'm so glad. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh.
I have something to add. So one of my favorite interviews that I did for the Coogan book was with a guy named Juan Rosa, who's a gay assistant to one of the local assemblymen. And he said that he loved Coogan's because they did not have an LGBTQ night, which meant any night could be LGBT. So he appreciated that.
Yeah, it seems like very many roles that are concerned. So one of the points that we emphasize in this exhibit too is the importance of interior space, and how with the neighborhood bars, the owner bars, they all lived the same. And one of the reasons why is because they were directly financed by breweries, and breweries financed bars in order to get a leg up on the urban consumer market, beginning in the 1870s. So they put a lot into creating comfortable, familiar interiors. And this is especially important at a time when, working class housing was subpar, to say the least. So John, I was wondering if you could take a minute to read on page 97. I have it marked here if you need it. Where you have this really fantastic description of Coogan's, if you could read for us.
There were nights at Coogan's. Starting here. Okay. Outside, there was crime, suffering, danger, anxiety, and the cold shoulder of a bigoted country. Inside, there was comradeship, joy, and an atmosphere where you could let your guard down. You came up the stairs from the graffiti-strewn subway. You disembarked from a crowded bus rank with body odor and the smell of a day-old egg salad sandwich someone had forgotten in their briefcase. You hustled up the block from your job at the hospital. You passed through the black doors and left your troubles behind. You entered the sanctified space of warm greetings, inebriation, laughter, music, and storytelling. And you didn't want to leave.
Thank you. One of the things I love about that is the specificity of this description. It's clearly a specific place. It's not just any bar you're talking about. So I was wondering if we can maybe elaborate on that for us about what made that interior space of Coogan's a refuge and so inviting.
Well, Coogan's was a very large space. It had 3 separate rooms. So there was the bar area, there was a dining room, and then there was a function room. So it could be 3 different spaces on any given night. You could have a party for like a local politician in the bar area. You could have a dinner party in the dining room, and you could have a birthday party or a funeral or whatever family ceremony you needed in the function room. So, and as you're saying about city life, most people in Washington Heights lived in small apartments, large numbers of people in small spaces. They couldn't have gatherings at their home, right? So the bar became the place where you had your celebrations with your neighbors. And so it served as a public space for those kinds of gatherings. It was a warm and welcoming space. And because they were very close to Presbyterian Hospital, they often got a lot of people who either had just been released from the hospital or who were sitting vigil for someone who was going through a medical ordeal. And so they became very good at reading their patrons to know when, oh, this person just needs to be given some food and left alone, And I've had many people give me testimonials about how they would go to Coogan and they would be treated well, and how Coogan's was a place that sustained them through a 3-week or 3-month ordeal at the hospital. So it served all of those functions.
Thanks. So Allison and Hannah, I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about the interior space of Mel's, and if there's any kind of intentionality that you put into either not changing or changing things to kind of create the atmosphere that you're seeking to have with the space.
We love this. I mean, when we were looking at taking over the space, we really loved the shape of it, the wood paneling, the length of the bar, everything was in great shape. So aside from, it was very beige. So we painted the walls, we put in new floors because it needed to happen, and didn't do much else to kind of, it just needed like a little spit shine, really. Maybe an unintentional sort of outcome is we painted the bathroom kind of a subtle black. It's called noble blush. It's like makes everybody look good. You go and you look in the mirror, you don't want to see
this gentleman's sweater, the pink sweater, that kind of vibe.
Right. Kind of bring out your tone. Yeah. It looks good. Which it has now gained some like Instagram notoriety as it's the best bathroom selfie lighting in Baltimore. And unfortunately, like another outcome, I guess, is that one of the regulars from the previous ownership told us that it was a little gay. And that was the last straw for them, unfortunately. No pink bathrooms. It's a powerful color, you know. But also, yeah, it has achieved what people have called the perfect bisexual lighting. Yeah. Also, so it was just like, it's funny how these like small decisions really just sort of like domino or snowball into yeah, it's like, you know, this looks good, right? But yeah, otherwise we didn't do too much cosmetically or
we've achieved a lot of knickknacks, like not we didn't, but we brought a couple. We brought the big rubber rat in, which we love. I'm a David Bowie enthusiast, so there's several David Bowie knickknacks, but sort of people have brought us things. So we have St. Patrick's Day wreaths. My father is sitting in the black and white check back there. There's a huge party every year for St. Patty's Day, the parade. So people ended their night there. So we have the St. Patrick's Day beads. We have prize beads. We have Orioles pride flags somebody gave us. Yeah. Somebody left a bat from a League of Their Own costume last year. So we have a big blow up bat. People started to offer us bobbleheads of the Orioles, so we have like a decent collection of Orioles bobbleheads. But yeah, it's just sort of like developed its own vibe based on the people that come in. To speak to sort of the description that you read of Coogan, there's times where I look around and I feel like very much like that. Like it's our space in contrast to that space is incredibly small. It's probably not. It would probably fit in this room, for sure. So on any given, Saturday night, there's John Waters and 6 of the most beautiful models / actors you've ever seen, and then like 3 of our friends who had friends come in from wherever, and then 6 people that live in the neighborhood, and that guy, and yeah, and you look around and everyone's kind of having their own conversation, but you jostle into people, and they're all kind of different, and it's very warm. It's lovely. Nice. Oh yeah, well, and we have like so historically the bar is an ice house, which is why I said during Prohibition you could go get ice and wood and coal there and buck, and we still sell ice. So people come in who are at the breweries locally and need or throwing a party, or Little League people. We find all the festival ice, so it's like there's a lot of coming and going and of different folks in a really small space, and it's developed sort of the patina of that around it, which is nice. But like internally, we just kept it the way it was, and put the coat on it.
Wow. I love that the decorations are kind of community generated. And I gotta ask, was it beige or was it white with cigarette smoke?
It was beige. It was like middle school library beige. Not good. Oh, so I think there was a deal on the paint, honestly. It was like that. Yeah, it was like well painted, beautifully done. Yeah, drop ceiling with no stains, like beautiful, but just the same color throughout. Very disconcerting.
I mean, the interior of Coogan's also developed in that way. There were just over the years pictures of their regulars and pictures of visitors would end up on the, or like a local author who published a book, his jacket would end up on it. So by the end, all the walls were covered with these memorabilia that just became a kind of living history of the neighborhood. And when the bar closed down, they made sure that everyone got their picture back, or their living relatives got the picture back, or the bit of memorabilia back. They spent a lot of time doing that, so it was great.
Yeah, again, it shows their ties to the community, the responsibility to the community. So this actually segues to my final question and the idea of regulars. So throughout the book, you have really interesting chapters of regulars that frequented Coogan's. And that's another thing that we emphasize in the exhibit, that the corner bars in Baltimore were not places that people bar hopped. They were not for tourists. They were for locals. And during the working men's club period, it was estimated that the same 50 or 60 men would keep one of these establishments in operation. So regulars, establishing regulars is key to their survival. So of all the different stories of regulars, do you have a particular favorite you can share with us?
My favorite regular is this guy named Dave Crenshaw, known throughout the neighborhood as Coach Crenshaw, Coach Dave. And he had grown up in the neighborhood, and his parents had been involved in local government and on the school board. So he was expected to contribute to the neighborhood as well. And he led athletic activities, after school activities at the local elementary school. And he believed in bringing people from all over the neighborhood together. They didn't have to pay anything to participate, and he would take them downtown to play basketball against other neighborhoods. And my favorite line of his, and then later on he would take busloads of people camping, because these kids didn't get a chance to camp. He would take them camping. He would take them to Washington, D.C. so they could see the museums and learn about the history of this country and all that. And so he was aided and abetted by Coogans. He would walk around the neighborhood, beautifying the neighborhood, picking up litter, planting stuff in the park. His kids would be following him. And then the reward was they would go to Coogans. And Coogans would go out of their way to help him out. So, for example, the chicken wing platter was only available on football Sundays. But when Dave came in with his kids, it didn't matter. The chicken wing platter was available. It was Sunday, right? They would break up their ice cream special, which was 3 scoops of ice cream into 3 portions. So it would be cheaper to buy, but each kid would get their own portion of ice cream. And then when they would need to leave early in the morning to go on these bus trips to go camping or to go to DC to see the museums, the buses would leave at 6 a.m. and there was no place for them to wait. So the night porter would open the door and let them wait in the bar, and they would pack a lunch for them to eat on the bus. And so my favorite line of Dave's is that, I'm a black man in a neighborhood full of Latinos, and they trusted me with their kids. And I'm so proud of that. So, and they trusted Cougans with their kids too.
So my next question to you, do you have regulars, and do you have a story of a particular favorite?
Yeah, I think we talked about this before we came, sort of who we would highlight. We all sort of right. We had a regular who was a holdover from previous, since he was a kid, who passed recently, Carl. Who we had some guys come in who used to come in, and they'd stop coming in when they figured out what we were about. And the bathroom was pink, because it just makes you gay if you pee in a pink bathroom. I didn't know if you know that, but it's true. The one that sort of lingered and meant a lot to all of us was Carl, who was just an older fella. He's a working man his entire life, neighborhood guy, knew everybody in the neighborhood, just every single person that had ever grown up in Hampden, he knew about him. And he was sort of my litmus test for people. There was nothing that would make him uncomfortable about somebody unless that they had not been raised right. That he didn't like that. There were some people who come in and they wouldn't speak nicely to us and be like, I don't know about him, Hannah. And that would be, oh no, oh my God, okay, you can't go back anymore. Carl doesn't like him. But Carl always wore a ball cap, and he would come in between jobs. He was a plumber, and our toilet is very old, and it would run, and he would come in sometimes and bring a brand new stopper and offer to fix it for us. Allison is very handy actually for anything. I call him, but Al would usually be fine with it. But he would be like, I'll fix it. Drink Coors Light. That's all I ever wanted. When he was done with it, he'd crush it and put it in front of him, and that's how you knew he wanted another one. I mentioned like on a Saturday night, it's this kind of group of people, and there's like Carl was the first to get off the seat. Didn't matter if you were a drag queen, you were a 25-year-old college teacher, you were 75, and Carl was going to give up the seat for you. He were O's bar. Allison didn't particularly care about baseball, but the rest of us were very go O's. And Carl would come in and watch a game with us, and several times our bartender and dear friend Ryan tried to take him to a game and just didn't work out for this and that. But he was a person that you wanted to hang out with. And he was just always, he was the best of us. I mean, he was just the sweetest, salt the earth man. He was our favorite, like everyone that's ever worked there, Carl was our favorite. And losing him was a blow, because that was losing sort of the neighborhood grip too, you know, because he always knew, oh, I do it. And I mean, like, our dear friend Bree is this like beautiful, vivacious, loud Black woman who like he just immediately adored, like couldn't not hug her, and she would just like come over and hug him, like, oh, hi, and he would blush, you know, it's so sweet. So he was probably our favorite, but we have great regulars. I mean, yeah, they pick the day. We all sort of work in a rotation. Mondays, some days Tuesdays and Wednesdays. So different people who are closer with us come in on the days that, like, you know, everybody comes in to rotates on a Friday or Saturday. We see people that live in the neighborhood, people that are teachers. They come in after work and on their way home, or they work downtown, or they work in hotels. We have a great group of regulars who really take care of us and have become friends with each other. People who have only been in the neighborhood maybe like 2 or 3 years, who never knew their neighbors, now know all their neighbors, which has been really beautiful for us to see over the last year and a half. Just like people who usually sit 2 or 3 stools down now know that they're going to run into, you know, Dan or Sarah or whatever. Like they're gonna find their friends. It's been really cool to have a place like that where you can walk in, know that you're going to run into somebody you like, and get to chatting. So that's been really great. I think a part of why the neighborhood bar is so important, to get to know your neighbors.
Yeah, well, thank you. This concludes my question portion of the evening. So I would love to turn it over to you now. Does anybody have any questions that you would like to pose to our panel? Can I travel with this?
I can almost do it from here. Yes. Well, why did the bar close?
Coogan's closed. Coogan's closed because of the pandemic. There's 2 years before the pandemic, they almost went out of business. It's a big part of the story. They were saved in part by Lin-Manuel Miranda, who had gone there when he was younger. He was a neighborhood kid. But when COVID came along, they shut down. And the 2 primary owners were in their 70s. Their partner was in her 50s and wanted to be a stay-at-home mom. The 7-year-olds were ready to retire, and so they read it very quickly. And one of Peter's famous sayings is, "People in the bar business wait too long to close." And so they made the snap decision: we're closing. And they told their staff, the food and beverage business is not going to be the same for at least 2 years. So think about doing something else. And they proved to be correct in that. So yeah.
Coogan's is a New York bar?
Yes, Washington Heights and Upper Manhattan. Correct.
You talked about the taxonomy of different bars. With the fact that more and more bars are becoming more and more diverse or accepting, do you see the demise of the quote unquote gay bar?
That's a great question. I think that, I mean, there are something like 20 lesbian bars in the country. So like that's been happening, I think, like the demise of that sort of space. And I guess I don't know what goes into killing that sort of space. I assume money. But I would like to imagine that people are going to want a specific space sometimes. And even we have a great group of regulars, these guys who come in every Friday and post up and hang out with us, you know, and for hours, and then they go to the gay bar. So I would like to hope that there's still space for different kinds of spaces and more specific spaces.
I mean, maybe just in the flow of things, like Al said, a lot of money is devoted to not so much to specifically gay bars. Rents go up and you can't afford it, so I mean maybe that happens, but I don't think so. Just because, again, people like specifically in the political situation we have now, it is still not completely safe in a lot of places to be who you are. So I think as long as that persists, there will be specifically gay bars because it's not dangerous. I mean, and even then, you know, you look at the specific like shootings that have happened about specifically queer spaces, like it's still not totally safe. But I think as long as somebody wants to fight against that sort of precariousness, there'll be gay bars dedicated. Yeah.
And just like just about every other industry in the country, there's consolidation in the bar business. There are these large companies that are just buying up bars, and you know, so that also is leading to the homogenization of these spaces, I think. So a true small business, neighborhood owned, is to be cherished and valued, just like a neighborhood bookstore or your local public library.
I had a question that kind of relates to that. So I'm researching the death of lesbian bars and all of the factors. We've actually gone down to 13. It's even worse. Yeah, we have 13 left. And one of the factors, you mentioned consolidation. So we are kind of shifting from gay, like I mentioned, to queer bars. So would you say, because Melanie is that kind of all-encompassing space, would you say that kind of contributes that you shifted to a queer bar, what's working out for your connections?
I think I need to clarify the question.
Yeah,
No, I'm like totally tracking. And then, so you're asking, like, if like the queer umbrella, like how it suits us in our community?
yeah, how that's contributing to you're building your relationship with the community by using that queer term that all.
Yeah, I hear you. I think it just for me, I'll speak for me, not us. For me, it kind of furthers that inclusivity, and it doesn't necessarily spectacularize any one kind of person, and that's sort of my motivation to like adopt like queerness rather than like something specific like a lesbian or like gay or what have you. It just allows for a wider diversity of safety, I think, and for inclusivity. Yeah.
Makes sense. Yeah, I've done a lesbian. I'm pretty well known by now. But yeah, I don't think it's you know, gets a little niche specifically. So I think that it being the umbrella space, it's hard to like, because I'm sure that there's a lot of bars that exist that are outside of like specifically being a lesbian bar,
yeah.
Which is kind of difficult because I think it's a different energy, obviously. I don't know, I really want to read whatever your paper is, so
Yeah,
it's
a work in progress.
Yeah.
We've done a lot of research.
No, I would love to hear more about that. Yeah, I don't know. I think that Allison is perfect actually. But yeah,
Historically, also like lesbians are the first group of people to. This is stereotyping. This is probably not. But lesbians are like the first group of people to like help out, right? And to like give space. And
it's like historically verified.
Yeah. Like all right there. So if there's like a space that needs to be diversified a little bit, I imagine it's that lesbian bar. It's like, yeah, come on, trans friends, like come on, like my non-binary buddies, like let's go, have our space, and then. I could see that maybe contributing to like the
we're so nice we just completely lost the label.
You probably know about it, but there's a book that came out earlier this year where I think it's a Canadian author who went in search of the remaining lesbian book. Yeah. What's the title of it? Do you remember? I can't remember. Yeah. Okay.
Hand up in the back. You're giving back. It's you.
Yeah, I was wondering how you picked if you were a regular at Coogan's, and if not, how you picked that particular space to write about, and as a follow-on, like how you picked the medals.
I'll answer the second question first. I went this afternoon on my way here, and I felt like I had to do my due diligence. and visit the bar. So I stopped in Hampden on my way in. I had an old fashioned and a glass of water, and I had a very pleasant half hour. It was great to be there. I walked around the neighborhood a little bit to kind of get the feel of it. So that was lovely. Yes, I would definitely go back many times. And then Coogan's, I got to know Coogan's because of my wife. When my wife is a Dominican immigrant. Her family all lived near Coogan's in Washington Heights, which at that time was the largest Dominican community in the city and the second largest Dominican community in the world after Santo Domingo. And so when I started dating her, I was living in other parts of New York City, and I started going to Upper Manhattan for the first time. And part of dating her was going to Coogan because her whole family went to Coogan. And so I got to know it because of her. And so falling in love with her also meant falling in love with her neighborhood and falling in love with Coogan. It all went together. So I do have a personal investment in the story.
Unfortunately, I owned a neighborhood tavern in Fells Point. Fells Point had more bars per capita anywhere in the world in like a 4-block radius. We had over 90. The tavern I bought had been closed for I don't know how many years and was used for storage. The lady that owned it had a bar down the end of the block and lost her lease. And one day she came up and opened this building and said, "We're open." It didn't matter. It was dirty. It had been used for storage. It was a total wreck. Well, she died. And her family had to sell it for the inheritance to, to divide everything up. But she still had a husband. And he was suffering through throat cancer. Well, when I bought the bar, I bought it with an ex-priest who just happened to be the head of alcoholism in Harford County and Howard County. Okay, he and I did this bar. Well, we went to settlement, and when we came back and we opened the place up, the man was still there, the husband, and he was like, "Well, I live here," and I'm like, "Okay, now what do we do?" So we said, "You can move into the second room in the back room and you stay here. And it's okay until you find a place." Well, as I was cleaning it, the roaches were climbing up my arm to do pullers. It was a hard hat industrial bar. Heavy, because we had H&S Bakery, Allied Chemical. I mean, I could go on with this story for the rest of the night. I had local men that lived upstairs. The bar at that time was called the State Fair because it was in Fells Point. And we had actual seamen living there that would pay their rent once a year. They would ship in and out. And that's the way it was. It was their home. I could just go on and on. The tenants upstairs, none of them drove. They all worked in the neighborhood. Once a year, I'd say, "Okay, today's the day. We're all going to do something." And we would go to Annapolis. We would go to Hershey. We would do something. The whole day was on me. And I took pictures of them. And they loved it. But my men were so protective. Some of them had keys to the bar. I don't care. They, I could go to the back. I could go out to lunch. And I come back and all their little pennies would be lined up with shots, whatever. I would pour draft beer. And I don't know if you have draft, but it had a lot of foam on the top. I would give them the extra phone. I said, nothing like too much head. There was a bar across the street. Of course, we never mingled. I mean, it was just, this was your space and you stayed in it. And one day I happened to go across the street and he had a poster of like 69 ways to do it. And I was like, my men don't need that poster. Again, I have story after story, and I hated every day of it. There ain't nothing like a dirty ladies' room.
We only have one bathroom, so we don't have to worry
Oh,
about
well, I found out. I didn't even know it. We had a men's room and a ladies' room. The ladies' room had piping. The building is 1860. Okay, it's an old building. I bought it as is, and we had, you know, pipes. So what I did is I just covered the wall with fabric, so I could get in and get to the pipes. Well, once I found out that they were using drugs or pot or whatever they were doing, and they were having it in there. So I called the staff and I said, I want you to come see me something. So I had this pot and I was like, watch me. Flushed it down the toilet. That was the end of that crime. The business cards never had our phone number on it, because if your wife called, you gave her the number. I didn't give her the number. Now, Harry, here's the phone. You handle it. So again,
yeah, what happened to it? What is it now? Do you know?
Yeah, I sold it. Okay, it's a 6-day license, which was more than I even wanted. It's documented by the Smithsonian. After 20 years, it has a plaque on the front of it. It's historic. And I sold it to 7 white African Jews, a family of Jews. And that's what they claim they were. And I sold it at public auction because it would not pass any inspection.
Is it still a bar?
Now, after I sold it and I held the mortgage, a couple years later, they rented it and they said, this is really for us. Would you take it back? I was like, no. So it went through a couple changes of hands. And the man that bought it, he is now a saint. His name was Mike, and it is One-Eyed Mike in Fells Point. He turned it into a Grand Marnier bar. They are the largest dealer on the East Coast. You buy your bottle, which is very expensive. You have a number, and if I own a bottle, I can give you my card, and you can go in and have a shot on me. They have turned the entire building. All my tenants and everything are gone. They have turned the entire building into storage for the liquor. It was just recently up for sale. The last owners, Mike died. The last owners had it, and unfortunately they bought it at the beginning of COVID. Fells Point has taken a turn because of all the publicity. But it's there. It's 708 South Bond Street in all its glory. It's open right now.
Nice.
And again, it's not a gay bar. It is
To bring this full
totally
circle,
straight, I
Anna
think.
had a bartender and roll sushi in John Stevens.
That's all the point.
Yeah. You know, we all intermingled.
Whoa.
Bertha's,
Yeah.
the horse, cat's eye. We were all there. We were all there together.
Wow, well, thank you for sharing. Just in the time we have left, there's a hand back there. Yes.
I have a quick question. I'm Edie. And I've been in Hampden since 1987, so I have about 34 years to go, and I'll be a local. And Ice House has, I know, has property, and I'm curious about Coogan's, if there was a related property, and then if there are any plans for the next, not put you guys on the spot, but curious about any plans that we appreciate to keep all the surrounding area lovely, but curious about the attached property and what those mean, because I think they have a lot to use the corner bars.
No, Coogan's was on the ground floor of a large apartment building and it's still empty. They have the hospital, which is their landlord, hasn't leased it out. So the facade is still there. They had one time opened a second bar downtown that was a total failure. And they quickly got rid of that and just focused on Coogan's, and which was a huge success. Yeah.
All right, so the property, normally we answer that question with, I guess you'll have to wait and see. The plan, Allison is a brilliant designer of buildings, an architect indeed. That's true, I'm not saying in a voice, but shit. So we do have plans. Right now, we've started to do a little bit of work on what we can do. A lot of what will happen is going to depend on what the city of Baltimore allows us to do. So in the nicest way possible, stay tuned. Something is happening. It's just, we're not quite sure what yet. Yeah.
Do you live in Hampden? Do you live in that area?
I do.
Yeah.
I used to. I lived on Roland and 41st for a while. And I grew up, I started in the industry there over a decade ago. And then during COVID, I was working in Federal Hill. And I bought a house in just northeast of Hamilton, which is amazing. I love it. I live there still. And then I bought a bar 3 blocks from where I used to live. So shot myself in the foot a little bit. But yeah, Olive's around the way. So if something crazy happens, one of us can run down the street and figure it out. Like say I forgot to lock the door one night and the delivery guy came in and the alarms went off, which is never happened. No, that's the amazing thing.
Great. Well, just want to thank you all for coming. I mean, it's great. Everyone to go to Mel's and to consider buying Jon's book. So thank you for coming to the first again edition of Work Matters, and we hope to see you at the next one, which is November 16th.
November 15th, we will be open late until 8 p.m. But our next Work Matters program is going to be in December 7th.
Great. Well, thank you all for coming. Yeah.